Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the November TED Talks Discussion Club. My name is Mark Hnitka, and I'm a full-time faculty member here at UAGC, and I work closely with the honors program. I work extensively with the honors program along with Clifford, and we love hosting these. This was a collaborative effort, and we're just about at the end of the year, right? This will be our first year of the TED Talks Discussion Club. So we've really enjoyed it. We love hearing from all of you about your perspectives and thoughts and perceptions about these different topics that we talk about. And of course, the TED Talks themselves are great, short, quick format, to the point, with lots of interesting information in them. So without further ado, I'm going to post the link for the first discussion, which is "You Don't Actually Know What Your Future Self Wants" by Shankar Vedantam, who is the host of a really cool podcast that maybe some of you have heard. And I think he also is on other, I think he's been on Radio Lab as well, and possibly This American Life. He's a very interesting personality and thinker. So I hope you will enjoy this one. And I'm going to share. You can either click on the link and watch it, or I will share my screen and I will broadcast the audio, but I'm also going to stop recording once this is up so that we don't get copyright hits. Oh, wait, share screen. All right, and yeah, feel free to type in the chat if you have thoughts as it's going on. And again, yeah, "You Don't Actually Know What Your Future Self Wants" by Shankar Vedantam.
When I was 12 years old, I fractured my foot playing soccer. Because the next day, my dad was taking me to see a movie, a soccer movie. I worried that if I told my parents about the foot, they would take me to see a doctor.
What did everybody think of that perspective of the future, and especially with respect to our future selves?
Are you asking what our self did before watching it then, or what we think now after watching it?
You could compare. You can compare and contrast. Either one.
Hey, Mark, I'll share real quick. So,
yeah,
can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I like the the perspective as far as investing in ourselves. I mean, it's kind of encouraging, and those, the three kind of pieces of advice he said, being curious. I mean, first and foremost, there are many studies that show, as we continue aging, focusing on learning something new, that helps in mental health and physical health as we age. So, I mean, that alone, I think, is good outlook. But most importantly, investing in ourselves and saying, yeah, I don't know where I'll be in 30 years. Here's what I think I might be doing. So you move forward towards something, and it gives you kind of like a track, where you have goals ahead of you. So it leads you in the right direction, rather than getting stuck in the mundane day to day, where you can become bored and just kind of live that 9 to 5. And I think it has a huge impact on mental health. Is kind of the takeaway that I kind of gleaned from this.
Yeah, for sure, Tony. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I feel like with a lot of things in life, it's about balance. Like, we want stability, and we want to have those like goals that we're set on and we're working towards, but then we also want to be open to new possibilities or different opportunities, things like that. So I guess it's about balance. I see Deanna said, "So true. I'm very different from myself 10 years ago. I was a 21-year-old that thought I was mature and had well-rounded views. Not so much." Yeah, I think probably, I feel like once you like get into your 20s, you're like, I'm an adult now, and I know more than I think I know more than I probably do. But I think year after year, I keep realizing that I don't know as much as I think I do.
This is Catherine with the C, in case you wonder. So I think it's more, I know I became a mom for the first time later in life, and it is completely changing and mind altering. And the way I think I would have done things, 10 years ago are so different than the way I do things today. And it's always evolving. Like I'm talking a cookie business and looking at doing things now that I never would have, even probably had a concept to do that a while back. So it's nice that the people we were 10 years ago, we definitely are not today. So it's maturing and changing over time, which is good because change is inevitable that we can't plan for.
Definitely. Was that I think you had your camera on earlier. Are you in your kitchen, or is that your office with like the
Oh, no, that's the kitchen. My husband built that when we remodeled our kitchen a few years ago.
That's what do you do your, you said you have a cookie business. Do you do that out of your home, or do you have a space for that somewhere?
No, I'm starting it. I've always grown up like knowing how to do it. My parents hand decorated cookies when we were little, back when you could take hand decorated cookies to school. So we learned the skill, and it's something I've always loved. But I'll do cakes and cookies for more friends and family, but I've been getting paid on it recently. So right now, yes, it is out of my home, but it's only part-time because I'm not giving up my career. I have a good career. So it's just something I think that's fun to do and enjoyable to see other people enjoy what I'm doing. Like eating it is really cool to see them enjoy it.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. It's going to touch on a few of the chats. Whitney said it was a little confusing, a little mind-opening. He definitely had good advice and is not wrong. I've never given much thought to how my future self will be or what I will value then. Looking back, though, I can clearly see that I was young and made poor choices. Well, you must have made enough good choices to get where you're at now. And that's, I think, one thing I think I've heard from probably a therapist or philosopher or something said that we should look back on our younger selves with compassion and understanding and forgiveness for maybe the poor choices that we made. Ava said experiences change us, and so does age. We fear different things as we get older. It's a great point. And usually we're a lot more fearless when we're younger. As we get older, we start to realize that we're not as invulnerable as we once thought.
I don't know, Mark. I'm gonna propose the contrary in some ways. Not to get really bleak. I don't mean to bring in super bleakness here, but there's a lot of research suggesting that people's fear of death is actually much greater when they're younger. Can be. I know in my own experience, I went through quite a period of like being really conscious of mortality when I was young, and I've actually, I don't want to say I've got death waiting in my closet for a convenient cup of tea, but I feel like I'm not nearly as dwelling on it and as anxious about it myself now as I would have guessed I would have been years ago. So I think I would be hesitant to generalize too much about. I do think our kinds of fears change, the things we worry about, and the things that seemed really dramatic and big seem to kind of recede in the distance and get smaller and smaller. You think, why did I worry about that, or why did I make such a big deal? I'd like to think we kind of develop a sense of equanimity over time. But again, to say we go trend in any particular direction other than older is probably, there's going to be someone that's going to say, no, that's not the way it is. And even older, I'm reminded of the song by Roger McGuinn from the Byrds. I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. The song Younger Than Yesterday. So maybe you don't even get older. There's a lot of wonderful comments. I didn't mean to interrupt them here. There's some other great talking points. I'll go ahead and take a couple and then pass it back to you. Ava says, experiences change us and so does age. We fear different things. Crystal says, it's very interesting to think about how different we are throughout our life. It is. And, one thing that's kind of related to this is we, in a way, we construct ourselves. I mean, we have experiences and then we construct ourselves through telling stories to each other, whether it's a bio that we put out or whatever. What do we value? What do we put weight to? What stands out as an important formative moment? And those formative moments kind of define us. So it's not only are we fluid in terms of changing over time, but we're also kind of constructing ourselves all the time, which gets into a very tricky morass of the question of, is the self wholly illusory, which is a great question, because there's a lot of science and philosophy arguing that there really is no such thing as a self at all. That'll blow your mind, and we won't go there tonight. But anyway, Catherine says he had some good talking points. I think it takes courage to embrace change and look forward to new and exciting things. And then ironically, of course, if we don't, then we end up becoming static and our life becomes boring. If we don't embrace the possibility for new adventures, we don't get to have that growth that joy. I find a great joy in transformational moments I've encountered in my life. So, Mark, I'll pass the baton back to you.
Thank you for covering some of those chat points. And I saw that one of the most recent ones was Linda's talking about some of the laws that were passed long ago that seem ridiculous based on how things are today. And it's like the amount, and the thing about laws as well, at least in the United States, is that laws never go away unless they're purposefully gotten rid of or overwritten. So there are like all these things that are illegal that like you probably don't even realize are illegal, and like you could theoretically get, probably usually like misdemeanors, not as many felonies, but I'm sure in some areas there's some like felonies that are just completely like why is that a felony? But and then Mary Lou, never thought after 32 years with the same company that I would not retire within that organization. At 55, I was thrust into the job market. So the be brave advice certainly rings true with me. Yeah, that's, I think a lot of people, especially with the last, well, the pretty serious recession in like 2008, 2009, I think that really displaced a lot of people. And then more recently with the kind of the COVID recession and market uncertainty. So I think a lot of people were affected by that. Stephanie, there's a book of the most ridiculous laws per state, I'm sure. And it's some of the ones that I've heard, I'll have to look them up, but they, yeah, some of them are very ridiculous. Oh, Christopher, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hey, so I hope I say this in a way that makes sense. I've got it in my mind, but I don't know if it's going to come out the way that I intend for it to come out. But I look back when I was 21 and, I had certain perspectives, beliefs, ideologies, and I felt like I knew a lot. And then now that I'm 35, I look back on my 21-year-old self and think, wow, I've grown so much. I've learned so much. I've expanded the way that I see the world. And I kind of look back and I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm guilty of that now without realizing it. You're not conscious of it when you're younger. And I guess it's ironic because I'm not even conscious of the fact that I'm still guilty of that today, because I'm pretty certain that I'll look back on myself in 15 years when I'm 50 and think, wow, my 35-year-old self still thought that he had it figured out, when in fact, I'm still going to go through like a lot of growth and a lot of, expanding of perspectives and all that stuff. So I guess my point is I'm still not even conscious of it. Like it's still like in the back of my mind. And part of what the video said is to be a little bit more humble. And I guess that's something to be more intentional.
Yeah, no, I think you said it very well, Christopher. So thank you for sharing. And one thing is, even if, obviously it's completely unrealistic that a person has everything figured out in their life at any given point in time. But even if you have everything figured out at a certain point in your life, or you're in a very good position, like things change and evolve over time. So you still need to change and evolve and adapt to whatever, the new situation is in the future. So you know,
That's a very good point, Mark, because I think I was just thinking about how the extent to which, and there's been so little written about it yet. You know, if you want to write a book, but I'll definitely promise to read if no one else will, write a book about the experience of technology over the last 30, 40 years, 50 years. You know, it's even difficult for me to imagine my young self because the world I inhabited was so incredibly different. I mean, I do recall being a child and waiting for the mailman to come. And yes, we probably did use the gender specific, sorry, but the mailman to come and bring the mail. And that was exciting because it was my one chance to get this, who knows what I could get from the outside world, usually nothing. Of course, I wouldn't know because there's no way to know in advance of tracking or anything. But that was it. That was it for the day. And then the rest of the day, I'd be off kind of doing what I want. Maybe I'd tune in the news. And those would be my only connections with the world beyond my interior world and any books I'd be reading and obviously the classroom when I was at school. And now it's like I get a beep every couple of minutes. Oh, what's the new message? So rather than anticipating something once a day, I'm in this kind of sense of perpetual anticipation. There's a way that our lives are just totally changed. I mean, how many of us, these devices are like, if I lose this, I won't have anything. And it was just a few years ago. It was not even 10 years ago. I didn't have a smartphone. I did perfectly well for a long time without one. And now I can't imagine going an hour or two without one. I become kind of uptight about it. So these are, again, the ways that the technology, and I think that's a big part. I would argue that the degree to which we're different than we were younger right now is much greater than it would have been during a time in human history when technologies change was at a much gentler rate. So.
Definitely. And a lot of futurists and people who study these tech trends say that the rate of change, especially in technology and how it impacts our lives, is actually accelerating. It's not even slowing down, it's speeding up. Or, you know, if you think kind of the trajectory of technology in the last 50, 100 years, pretty much since the advent of the computer. But I'm going to move us into the next video. The next video is a little bit shorter, but I do want to give us at least like 15 minutes to discuss it. So I'm going to cue that one up, and then I will share my screen, and I'll try to remember to pause the recording sooner this time. Hopefully that's fine. All right, let's see. Share screen. All right, so this one is how to build for human life on Mars. And it's a little bit shorter. And this is something that I find personally fascinating, and I hope to see in my lifetime in the not too distant future.
Let's imagine.
So that was quite a different take on the future. Does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share? Is anybody else interested in space?
I definitely find it interesting that by looking at another set of extreme circumstances, we could say solve problems that we already have here. Like you said, the hurricanes, tsunamis, and other things that right now we suffer through, that maybe we could make shelters that would prevent and save lives and crops and other things that are vital to those areas surviving.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you for sharing, Ava.
Yeah, that's really great to think about, because in fact, in the coming decades, there are cities in Pakistan that are likely to become uninhabitable over the summer months. So this is really kind of on us right now, this kind of condition. And I also think about shanty towns around the world, in Mumbai, and elsewhere, and in Rio de Janeiro. And wouldn't it be great to develop low cost, viable modular technologies for providing them with housing? So, I mean, I admit I'm more excited about the possibilities for here on Earth, but if the idea of going to Mars makes that possible, then I'm all for that idea to do that. But ultimately, I appreciate how she ends with this thought that we really don't want to think about going to Mars as an escape hatch for a planet we've ruined for so many reasons. First of all, even the remotest part of Antarctica is so much more inviting than the surface of Mars in so many ways. But it is interesting to think about the ways, and particularly the age of 3D printing.
Yeah, excellent points, Clifford. I wanted to mention and Robert said, kind of echoed Clifford's point about that, we need to improve our situation here on Earth. And Whitney said, I wonder how this technology could be applied to other problems and how it will impact current issues. It's great that we can build things from 3D printers. What materials do they use? Are we going to just be gutting more of our limited resources to further our technology? It has a lot of potential, though, for solving a few wicked problems. So like 3D printing, I think just means, basically, and it can be done like, I don't have one yet, but like a lot of home 3D printers use types of basically like plastic materials that get melted and then applied to create a 3D structure or model. There are also 3D printers that can basically print with metal. It's kind of like a 3D printer welder, and they can actually make shapes and materials that are much stronger than anything that could be fabricated any other way, because it can be constructed in 3 dimensions as it is being formed in one solid piece.
Yeah, also, because it doesn't have to be completely solid, it puts a grid in there. It can actually use less resources to make a 3D print than to make it via mold. And it would still be strong because it has that hexagrid inside. And you can do that with wood, plastics, metal. They even have food printers now.
Thanks for sharing, Clinton. I'm gonna have to stay muted for a couple minutes here because the dogs are going crazy. I don't want to disturb the recording and the meeting.
Mark, I could take over, no worries. So Deanna says, I believe it's paramount to humanity's longevity, whether it be for Earth benefit or as a way to expand. I encounter a lot of people that offer that argument, and it's something to consider. Now, some people will say, well, as our population gets too great, we can travel to another world. And of course, it's quite a challenge to get more than a few people to Mars. Has anyone read The Martian, by the way? That is one of the, and maybe Mark will type the name of the author into the chat, because I can't remember. I believe it's Weir, W-E-I-R, I think. But The Martian is a fantastic science fiction book that really isn't. It's looking just a few years ahead into the future to imagine a first challenge of being able to live on Mars, the very first pioneer individuals, and the challenges they'd face. And what I find exciting about it is that it's sort of realistic. It's not that far from where we are right now, so it's relatively easy to imagine that those kinds of challenges. It's not at all like Star Trek far off, or Star Wars far off in the future. So Mark shares about how they're trying this technology on Earth and probably using concrete. There's actually plastic can be refashioned to produce things like bricks and such. So there's a whole array of construction materials. Mycelium from fungi offer tremendous potential. There's a lot of interesting construction materials we might explore. And yeah, for one day, Mary Lou, for homes to have a 3D printer, imagine what that would be like. Andy Weir, thank you, Mark. Imagine what that would be like to be able to pretty much, I mean, this is the next step beyond Amazon. Right now, I call and Amazon delivers something in a few hours. Well, if I need a toothbrush, why not just print one when I need it? And that starts to actually sound like the Star Trek replicators, doesn't it? We're not that far from that. Of course, when I was young, the thought of the handheld device that tweets on the old Star Trek seemed like that's light years away. And now we think of how silly those things are compared to what with the smartphones we have. But it is just kind of mind blowing to think about what the future might be, and how how will the technologies we have now shape that future, and when will we finally get out into space? It's pretty scary to think about 50 years going by with really, well, there's been a lot of amazing just kind of remote. Heck, we now have images of relatively distant worlds in our solar system from remote landers and such that are much lower cost, of course. But when will we venture back into space? How much soon will that be? So Brian's Crystal says she watched The Martian, the movie, in high school, found it very interesting, and that Mark also noted that it's really entertaining. Brian says, I'm with Clifford. I'd like more progress made on Earth. How about self-sustainable housing and making housing costs lower? Why not experiment on Earth and then say, okay, we can, this is what we've learned, rather than experimenting entirely in a lab somewhere in NASA. Why not try the housing out in a slum, for instance, in somewhere in the world? So why not attempt this on the moon first? There's another idea Stephen suggests. I know they mentioned at the end, but to me that would be step one, rather than going to Mars. And it is surprising not to see. Isn't it China that actually has plans afoot to have a colony, have a presence on the moon in the not too distant future? I'm really surprised that there isn't a race to live on the moon yet. So anyway, I'll hand things back to you, Mark, for the last few minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, Clifford. All great points, and thank you for those who have shared in the chat. And feel free, anybody, if you want to unmute and share any thoughts. One, and this is I think they've already passed away, unfortunately. I think I got to hear them speak at a conference, but they're an architect from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, named Malcolm Wells, and they're regarded as the father of modern day earth sheltered architecture. So they were envisioning structures that were both like partially underground and also made of earth. And, you know, there's a lot of benefits to that in terms of heating and cooling and protecting the structure, but the structures weren't like living in a cave with no windows, like there were skylights and windows and things on certain sides. So, you know, I think things like that, and then using maybe like natural materials and that the 3D printing technology, we could develop some really sustainable, durable, and highly functional housing and structures. And I put their name in the chat. Does anybody else have any thoughts? Deanna said like Hobbit style homes. Yeah. And ever since, I would say ever since I read The Hobbit in 7th grade and really got interested in that, I think that maybe planted the seed of what it might be like to live in a Hobbit kind of home. And it, you know, it sounds kind of weird, but there are people already. I would say there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, in the world, and probably quite a few in the United States, all around, of these earth sheltered homes. So yeah, it's something to check out. I think it's if done well, it's a very good idea, and a very good has a lot of good beneficial properties.
You don't remember the architect who does it? or the engineer, but they have one that they started overseas, and then they started to do it more in the States, where they put, it's basically a big pillow, like huge, and they put the rebar and the concrete on either side, and then they inflate it so that the concrete is arched, and then they put the dirt and the grass on top of it, and then you have one side that faces off into the horizon while the rest of it's buried. And it's all made of concrete, so it's very sturdy.
Yeah, Clint, I think I've seen that before. There's some that are like the dome houses, and some of them, it's like, it's even like could be multiple rooms, and each room is like a kind of like a hemisphere, like a half of a sphere. And some of them even have like a skylight right in the middle. And then, it's like the waterproof membrane is what you inflate. And then, the rebar is there. And then the whatever your structural component is, which like you said, is usually concrete or cement. But there are ways, and you can mix sand and clay and probably even gravel from a building site, and use that in place of some of the materials that you would for concrete or cement. Because cement has actually a pretty significant carbon footprint. So it's important that we're careful about how we use it and how much of it we use in our building of structures and infrastructure. So we're down to our last minute. Anybody have, let's see, Robert said, any opinions on space station style living instead of settling on a planet? I think there's some interesting design concepts, and I do hope that we see at least some more advanced space stations orbiting the Earth. I don't know, maybe in like 10 years or something. So some people are very interested in potential for space tourism, which I think the cost of it would need to come down, significantly. And that's why I say like in 10 years or maybe even 15 or 20 years. But it would be kind of cool to go, if it could be affordable, to spend a long weekend or a week like on a space station, just hanging out. And in terms of like long-term habitation, I think that there's a lot of benefits to being on some sort of planet or even like a large asteroid, because you do have some amount of gravity, and you also have resources there, which could be like mineral resources, maybe water. But I don't know. I hope that we do a really good job of preserving and protecting the Earth. But I also hope that we, can come together as a human species and explore our solar system and beyond, and maybe have humans out there exploring and thriving, because I think it'll just be a more interesting and exciting future.
Well, and Mark, to that end, you raise a very good point, sort of indirectly here, and that is that space exploration has the potential to be somewhat unifying. So we're right now. There's war going on in Ukraine. There's other conflicts, but can we come together as a species to do this? And I do offer one positive example where we've managed to do it, and that is Antarctica. By and large, we have a whole bunch of nations have claimed pieces of Antarctica. You can find a map that shows those claims. But in fact, we've agreed to kind of put on the shelf, not the ice shelf, but the shelf, any potential conflict over who owns it. We've agreed to collectively just say that we all own it, and we all have a certain set of expectations as to how we're going to treat it. And it's working. So if it works on Antarctica, maybe it could work on Mars or the moon as well. And maybe those could be exemplars of how we can begin to bring peace to the world. So that would be an interesting outcome, wonderful outcome of space exploration.
Yeah, I agree, Clifford. And it's been also the case, I would say, in the International Space Station for a long time, except I guess China was not included, or not at the time of its inception. And China's kind of doing their own thing now. I think, China does have a space station now. I believe it's relatively small, but I think they're expanding on it. And I know too, this recent, Russian aggression in Ukraine has, I think, caused some tensions with the rest of the international community and in terms of Russia's participation in the International Space Station. But I think there are still Russian cosmonauts on the space station right now, and I'm not sure if that's going to end anytime soon. But yeah, it certainly is. Like I think humanity's at its best when we're all united, working towards a common goal that gives everybody a sense of sense of wonder and awe and a positive future. So hopefully we can see more of that in the coming years and less of the conflicts and less less human suffering, hopefully. So thank you everybody for coming and attending and sharing your thoughts and your perspectives and your ideas. Really appreciate it. I always love these TED Talk discussion clubs, and I hope you enjoy them too. Actually, a reminder, we will have one next month. You'll get an invite.
Consumerism will be the theme next month. Also, very importantly, if you would like to see a particular topic discussed, let us know. I feel like we're kind of radio personalities here, Mark, but really we're or NPR maybe. We're here for you. So let us know what you want to talk about and we'll make it happen. And if you want lots of hours towards your PLA credit, you can even lead one of these. We'll be happy to set you up for leading the discussion if you want, but you don't have to do that. Just come up with a topic and we'd be delighted because we're going to be starting to put that together in the near future. So let us know what you want to talk about. Or let us know what your current self wants to talk about. Maybe your future self won't be interested in that. Not much we can do about that, I suppose. Have a lovely evening and thank you all so much for joining us.
And here's the survey link in the chat right now for the Qualtrics if you're recording your PLA hours. Thank you, everybody. Thanks again. Have a great late afternoon or evening, and we'll see you at the next event.